we have here today is we have Craig and Craig from Mike Ball Expeditions, and they are going to share with us. To me, they're the authority in diving in Australia, the Great Barrier Reef, but they have a lot of other special expeditions focusing on different areas, marine life and experiences. So I'm very excited to share this with you this evening. So without further ado, I will put you in the hands of Craig and Craig from Mike Ball Expeditions.
Right, good evening everyone. Nice to have you all on board. The Zooms are new for me, so bear with me if I muddle my way through this. But anyway, I'll start with one of our promo videos, and it'll give you a bit of an introduction to what we do, and then I'll go through our presentation, our slide presentation with you. So here we go. Enjoy. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. A nice little escape, which we could all do with just now. Now, what I'll do is I'll run through my PowerPoint presentation here, which is just basically gives you an overview of what we do. And as Cheryl had said, I'll talk about the special expeditions, but initially I'll just cover our standard expeditions, what we do on a weekly basis. So here we go. Here we go. Alrighty. So the Mike Ball Dive Expeditions, we've been around for quite some time now. 1969 actually is when Mike initially started, and he opened up a business in Townsville, just south of Cairns. We're right up here in far north Queensland, and he opened a business in a sports shop and got into snorkeling and progressed through to scuba diving, a dive shop, and then had the first liveaboard built in the late 70s, early 80s. And from there, we progressed to 3 more liveaboards, and we did all our operations in Australia in the far north area here, from Townsville to Cape York in the north, and all the way up to Papua New Guinea. So we've been around for a little while. I've actually personally been with Mike for 25, 26 years now, so I've been around a while myself. As you can tell, my hair is getting a tad grey, so I've been around a while. All right, our liveaboard expedition. So we've got what we call our fly dive Coral Sea, our fly dive Cod Hole, and our Coral Sea Safari. So it'll become evident on the map, I hope, as we run through it. But basically, we leave every Thursday and we go out for 7 nights. And that expedition covers 2 different areas, where we're out here in the Coral Sea, and it is far offshore. It's another 70 miles beyond the Great Barrier Reef, and we've got 2 or 3 atolls which we visit when we've got fair weather, which is around 70% of the year we can get out to these atolls, and we spend 4 nights and 3 days of diving. out there. And when we're way up to the far north, we fly guests in and fly guests out. So you can do the 4-night and 3 days of diving out in the Coral Sea. Then you can fly home from Lizard Island way up to the far north, or then you can fly in and join the vessel and you're on the fly dive cod hole. So basically you fly up, join the vessel, and within an hour and a half you're in the water diving, and we spend the next 3 days coming back down the Great Barrier Reef in the far northern section, the Ribbon Reef section of the Barrier Reef, bringing us back home the following Thursday. The Coral Sea Safari is a combination of both of those expeditions. So 2 different environments, the big blue of the Coral Sea, where we've got sharks and deep drop-offs to 2,000–3,000 meters, crystal clear water, and then great biodiversity on the Ribbon Reef section, where we come back down south. As I said, you stay on board for the week and you can do them all. So down here in the bottom of the screen, we've got Cairns. And as I said, our fair weather itinerary, we head out here and we go out. Generally speaking, we don't head to Holmes Reef so much these days. We're heading out to Bougainville Reef. We spend a day diving on Bougainville, which is spectacular reefs out there. We've got some lovely wrecks that we can dive on the outside when we have nice calm conditions. Our weather predominantly from the southeast for about 9 months of the year approximately, but we've got all these beautiful sheltered dive sites on the western side of the reef there. So we spend a day here and then we head up to Osprey Reef. Osprey Reef has recently been given the status of it's basically a shark sanctuary now. So it's what we would call a green zone. So it's a no-take area. So no fishing, no collecting, diving only up in that area. So fantastic, beautiful place. And up at Osprey Reef, we've got a variety of dive sites there, but the major attraction is North Horn in the top tip there, where we can spend a lot of time diving with predominantly grey reef sharks. We do shark attractions, so photographers can get nice close-up action shots of the sharks, and we also do a shark feed and we talk through sharks and shark behavior. So fabulous area to visit. We spend a couple of days there. We've got some fabulous diving. Then we come into Lizard Island, and that's where we fly people in and fly our guests in and out, and then we do this section of the Ribbon Reefs back down here, and we dive down here on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and we finish our diving off Cooktown. So basically your day boats which come out to dive off Cairns, they only frequent the reefs off here, Port Douglas, Agincourt Reef System up here. So this is too far for day vessels, so it's liveaboards only which are diving in that area. Aircraft that we fly in and out of Lizard Island for 3 or 4 nights. Now, I'm just letting you know what we do. I'm not suggesting if you came from as far as you do, I don't think 3 or 4 nights is really quite long enough for you, but this just gives you an idea of how we get in and out of the island. So Lizard Island, we park out in the bay here, moor up, and we have a bit of a turnaround. The guests who are staying on for the 7 nights, they go over to the island, they do a guided tour around the island, and we've got some historical landmarks over there, beautiful walks through the pandanus palms and the swamps there on a boardwalk, and some terrific views out over the island. The new guests join us, and then we head out diving again. This is something that, you know, in these times, we're all juggling things a little bit and trying to diversify our product. Obviously, right now, our domestic market is all that we can tap into. You know, generally speaking, our business relies on only 30% from Australia and the rest from all over the world. But right now, we're pushing out a little bit more to encourage Australians to come, and not necessarily divers either. On the southbound leg of our expedition, we've now opened up to which is perfectly good for snorkelers anyway, but our major focus is and always has been scuba diving, but we can now accommodate people to come out and have a bit of a snorkel and even a bit of a kayak and spend 2 or 3 days doing some remote area stuff. So so we do visit these islands, and beautiful diving, lovely fringing reefs around there, but you've got spectacular bird life, and the scenery is just really quite special. It's absolutely gorgeous. So it's actually a nice break, and I'm looking at this that for the future, I believe our 7-night expeditions, this fits in really, really nicely for a nice break halfway through the expedition. So out into the Coral Sea, this would be typical scenes. This is a False Entrance, one of the sites that we frequent. The Big Blue feeling, we've got some lovely reef out there with some big steep drop-offs, but we've got big schools of trevally, barracuda, and we get a lot of various wildlife. A lot of white-tip reef sharks congregate around these areas as well, because we have channels which run up into the lagoon, which are very currenty, and we get lots of sharks that sit around in that lagoon, that entrance into the lagoon. Grey reef sharks, fairly typical for us out at the coral, out at Osprey Reef in North Horn. We see them all over these offshore reefs, but North Horn in particular, when we do the shark feed or shark attractions. But the feed, we can get up to about 60 grey reef sharks coming in, or grey whalers. And we also get silver tips coming in there as well. Other sharks that we see around Osprey Reef during the winter time, April through till September, we get scalloped hammerheads and greater hammerheads. So scalloped hammerheads come and school around, not in the masses you might see at the Galapagos, for example, but we get nice big schools of them from time to time, and we certainly see greater hammerheads year round. That's a shot from, I think that's actually Mike Ball himself there taking a shot. So when we do a shark attraction, so for keen photographers, we can get the sharks in nice and close for you to get a great opportunity to get that's extra special shot. And yeah, there you go, hammerhead from Osprey Reef as well. Stunning soft corals out there. The steep drop-offs is spectacular. We do drift dives down the edge of the reef there as well, and this is a fairly typical scene. When you get down to that 30-meter, 100-foot mark, the reef walls are just adorned in soft corals, so absolutely stunning. Hard corals as well out there. I will elaborate a little bit more about the corals later on, because I suggest that you've all heard about the coral bleaching issues that we have and the globe has, generally speaking. But there is a positive side to that, strangely enough. So this is out on Bougainville Reef, one of our first reef spots. Now, coming back into the ribbon reefs, Pixie's Pinnacle. I've been diving this reef since 1987, one of my favorite dive sites. It's a small pinnacle that you drop down to 100 feet and just whirl your way up to the top. And that reef today is as stunning as I was diving it in 1987. So it's not all doom and gloom when it comes to the coral regeneration. Now we've got animals from pygmy seahorses, I should say. We find these regularly on our sites. The crew are very good also at finding critters for you. So it's something that we do, is that on certain dive sites where we have lots of critters that people really enjoy, we will do an open dive deck scenario where the decks will be left open so you can dive at your leisure, and we may stay there for 3.5 to 4 hours at times, depending on the site, jump in when you want, but we ensure that everyone gets to see all of those critters. And then Potato Cod, very famous site for us called the Cod Hole, which is just adjacent to a lizard island. We've got a big family of potato cod there, been very used to divers who've been up there for decades, and we've seen these cod grow up. Some of our staff, they've got names for them because they all have special markings on the cod, just like whales do and manta rays, so we can identify the animals, and they even have names for them. Leaf scorpion fish, pretty typical. Stonefish, we have stonefish on another well-known site called Steve's Bommy, which is an array of amazing critters on there, and frogfish as well. So again, at different times we will find these guys and then they'll disappear. Not the stonefish, we've got about half a dozen stonefish on Steve's Bommy, so they're not hard to find. Epaulet sharks are another bottom dweller that's on there. So with regards to the corals, because I know it is a question that I do get asked, and when I go to dive shows, I like to elaborate on and sort of clear things up for people. I would suggest that you're fairly well aware that the Great Barrier Reef, it's a huge reef system, and it's 2,500 kilometers long, whatever that is in miles, I apologize. We've got thousands of reefs and islands as well throughout that area. So when we talk about bleaching, generally what happens is we'll have a bleaching event One of the worst that we had was during our summer of 2016 into 2017. And what happens is the initial guesstimates of how much bleaching has occurred is done from the air. So the scientists will jump on aircraft, they'll fly out over the reef tops, and you can clearly see up in the shallows where any bleaching has occurred, because quite simply areas of the reef become white. And what happens was in 1617, it was quite frightening, the stats that came out, that 90% of the barrier reef had been bleached. But effectively what they're saying is that out of all of the reefs that were bleached, there may have been 90% of the reefs actually had bleaching, but within those reefs, some of those reefs may have only been 2 or 3% bleached, if that makes sense. So you get patterns like this around 2016. If you see all this red area, now you would look at that and you go, wow, that is the most severely bleached area of reef, and then you get, it's all dead and there's nothing left to see there. Not at all. These are the initial, there's been a lot learned since these aerial surveys have happened. So now what they do with the information is they do flyovers, and then over the months after that, they then back it up with actual surveys on the reef underwater. So they can align the information they got from the air with what's actually occurred underwater, and then get a truer reading of what's going on. So an example in 2016, this area up here in the far north, which is all green, that is our far northern reefs where we visit during our Turtle Spectacular, one of the expeditions I'll talk about. That area of reef is stunning, and it was stunning then, and it is stunning now, and even during this most severe bleaching that occurred. So I jumped on, after we'd heard about all the bleaching, we did a recce expedition up here, and we dived all of these reefs and came back and contradicted what had been said. Not for the sake of the fact that it's very difficult for us, because we walk a fine line. We're constantly fighting governments with regards to global warming and pollution, CO2 emissions. It's a big issue for us. However, we still need to push out as tour operators that the reef is fantastic, come and see it. So we cannot paint, it's hard for us to paint a doom and gloom picture and yet to encourage you, the divers, to come and see it. So it's a fine line to walk. But after we'd gone up there and we dived it, we came back, had meetings with the scientists, and that is when they started going up and doing their surveys. So these maps here were turned from red to green as they discovered when they went up there and found it was a lot better condition. So this was 2016, 2017. And up here as well, as you can see later on, then this area here, this is the Ribbon Reef section here and here. So this is 2020. So this year they came out and said, there was a sweeping statement said that this is the worst bleaching that has ever occurred on the Great Barrier Reef in 2020. Fortunately for us, again, this area where we dive, we don't actually dive until off Cooktown up here, but we had no bleaching at all whatsoever. And even the areas which were severely impacted, the regrowth is really quite impressive. It's stunning, and a lot of our coral reef, you wouldn't even know we have bleaching occurring. So, but again, the large areas of bleaching were from aerial surveys and not from underwater surveys. And there's some different information coming out from the underwater surveys, not neglecting the fact that we've got big issues with bleaching within Australia globally. Two towers. This was filmed last year. Now these aren't large corals, but you can see the growth and the regrowth here. And these will be these small plate corals here would actually be about dinner plate size, slightly bigger. They do grow up to 10, 15 foot across, some of the larger corals in areas which are not impacted by, be it cyclones or coral bleaching, or our other issue that we have is crown of thorn starfish. So we have a big program, government sponsored program, to control them as well. But that was in 2019. Now, two towers, and not from the 1617 bleaching, but much further back, we had cyclones which decimated this area. And this actual shot is taken on the area that had no coral growth on it, or almost no coral growth on it, about 6 or 7 years ago. So quite exciting to see that. Cod hole. The cod hole where our big potato cod are, that is a very prone area to the weather, big seas, cyclones, coral bleaching. But again, this photograph was only taken very recently of the cod hole. Pixies Reef. So we've got some amazing, amazing coral gardens out there for you all to see. The Barrier Reef, amazing biodiversity, big schools of fish on the Barrier Reef, another shot up in the cod hole. We have large aggregations of fish at different times of year during their breeding seasons, and we've actually got aggregations about to happen next month of sweet-lipped and line snapper, which is really quite an exciting time to get in the water. So that's our basic expeditions. Then we have special expeditions, what we call the minke whales, Turtle Spectacular, the Yongala Wreck, and the Coral Sea, which is something we've recently reintroduced, although COVID closed us down and didn't get an opportunity to get down there yet, but we have got an expedition planned out there for the upcoming months, so we'll be heading back out there. Our Coral Sea Exploratory, which is a one-off which we do at the end of the minke whale expeditions, and then we've got our Far North Coral Sea Exploratory. So at the bottom of the map here, our standard expeditions coming out of Cairns and going up around Osprey and back in this area. All of our other expeditions, our Yongala Wreck, for example, we actually steam with the vessel to Townsville. We don't have anyone on board. This is where Mike Ball initially started his business and operations many, many years ago in Townsville. But we operate from there. We go out and we dive Wheeler Reef off the coast here, which is a stunning Great Barrier Reef site. Spend the afternoon there. We go down to the Yongala and we spend 2 days on the Yongala. Now, the Yongala as a wreck, it has a fair amount of history with it, but what is spectacular about that wreck is the marine life. It sits in the middle of nowhere and it's just got some really incredible marine life on the Yongala Wreck. Then we head out to Flinders. We spend a couple of days in Flinders Reef, again an offshore atoll, lots of sharks, a huge variety of reefs out there, big lagoon area. Flinders Reef is another reef which was impacted by bleaching back in 2002. We went back in 2010, we went back again in 2014, and Flinders is absolutely stunning again. So we're a bit excited to get back out there, but we've not had the opportunity yet, but we will be out there in October this year. And then we come up and we spend 1 day in Holmes, and then we come back into Cairns. So that's our 6-night expedition, Yongala. The Far North Coral Sea Exploratory looks at 3 different areas. We go out on this 7-night expedition where we have a day at Bougainville and we have a day at Osprey. So we're doing these offshore reefs that I've discussed earlier. And then we come into this section of northern reefs here. Now, 3 Mile Opening, Aladdin's Cave, a variety of sites in here. Now, what's wonderful about this area here, we're heading a bit further north to the equator. We start to see more different corals than what we get down here on the ribbon reefs. It starts to change quite dramatically as we head north. The continental shelf also, though, comes in a lot closer on this edge here. So we have deep water upwelling on this section of reef here. So we have a combination of the biodiversity that we get in here. So lots of critters, amazing hard corals, but we also get big schools of fish in here. So lots of silvertip sharks around here, but schools of barracuda, trevally, and the likes as well in that area. So, and then we do a side excursion. We go into Stanley Islands and we have a look at we've got some ancient indigenous rock art in there, and it's a really spectacular place to visit, really beautiful. And we go on and we spend, we basically just go on. I think we're only allowed 15 guests at a time to visit the rock art. So we go on in a couple of groups, have a look at all the art, and then back on board. And then we come back down and dive the Ribbon Reef section before returning home. So that's 3 different areas within the 1 week on our Coral Sea Exploratory. And then we have a Turtle Spectacular. Every year on this far northern section here, we've got Rain Island. I'd suggest you've seen David Attenborough's movies and on the big blue planet, I should say, and largest green turtle rookery in the world. Literally thousands of turtles come up every night. Now we cannot go on the island where the turtles come up, but we're allowed to dive because it's a protected zone. But we are allowed to dive around the front of the island, which is quite a distance away from the Sandy Cay area where the turtles go up. But spectacular diving, beautiful corals, and we obviously get to see lots of turtles coming through there while we're diving. So that's really quite an exciting experience. But as well as that, the reefs up here in this far northern section are stunning. Lots of soft corals, big fan corals, black coral trees. Again, different from what we do down here. So we do this in a one direction. We head from Cairns, we dive one day at the Cod Hole, and then we do drop in and see the indigenous rock art, and then we dive all the way up here coming into Horn Island. So that's a one-way 7-night, and then we have guests fly in and out of Horn Island up the top there, and we do a reverse. And then we have our Minke whale expeditions. We've just finished, had an amazing season with them. We were lucky enough after well, it's not post-COVID at all, but we were lucky enough to be allowed to get back out there. The government opened up businesses again, so we were allowed to get back out there in June, and we had a very successful June and July diving with the Minke whales, which was fabulous. It's fairly typical, a fantastic season we had this year, and every year the whales will migrate to the north. They calf, I'd suggest they mate. We've been involved with research since the mid-80s, and we have researchers on that do talks on the Minke whales, but we've been very involved allowing access for the researchers to get out there and do the studies with us during June and July every year. And a lot of the initial studies was their interaction with humans. So we are one of only 9 permit holders, although we were the only active permit holder out there this year. But we're one of only 9 permit holders, and I believe that even when they are active, there's only 2 or 3 of them are actually operating. But as I said, the initial interest was how do the whales interact with humans, so to allow us to get in the water with them. A little bit like dolphins with their curiosity. So they actually come to us. So wherever we go, they will actually be drawn into us. So it's a really quite exciting experience, and they get very, very close to us. Our Swim with Whales program allows us to, we have ropes which extend out the back of the vessel. So divers or snorkelers can hang on these lines, snorkelers hang on these lines, and the whales will come within 1 meter or 1.5 meters of you, as you will see in some of the video coming up. And so some of the closest interactions and best photographs are taken on the lines. But because the whales are coming to us, we actually go to our regular dive sites and we go scuba diving. And we go and look at all of the beautiful corals and fish, and we have whales swimming around next to us. They don't come as close to you. I'd suggest they'll probably come around the 20, 30 foot from you when you're on scuba, as opposed to hanging on the lines. They'll get as close as 4 or 5 feet from you, which is amazing. And they do all sorts of behavioral, they'll spy hop where they become inverted at the back of the vessel. They do bubble blasts. In fact, we had a guest this year had a bubble blast right underneath her, and it was quite something. Jaw gapes, they swim by with their mouths wide open. So incredible photo opportunities with them. So I'm pretty sure it's one of the most spectacular wildlife experiences that you'll have anywhere. The whales grow up to about 8 meters, 28 feet. I think that is roughly 24, 25, 26 feet approximately. And as I said, they'll come up and they calf. We know many of the whales. We have a lot of the whales come back every year. And we even see them come back over the years, and they come back with calves. So we can identify them again, which is part of the studies that we do. So we know which whales are which. So that's at Steve's Bommy, one of our very well dived sites. Far North Coral Sea Exploratory, as I said, that's a 650-mile expedition, and I elaborated earlier on about the 3 different areas that we go. So from spectacular corals to amazing fish life. These corals that we see here, this is actually on Rain Island, so on the eastern side of Rain Island that we're allowed to dive. And the coral there, it gets a fair bit of weather on it, so you can see it's not your branching coral or plate coral, but the colours are stunning. And this drops away to some very deep water. And we're also lucky enough to see a lot of turtles around that time of year. This is again on Stanley Island, so we get some beautiful. The rock art there is quite fascinating because it's been there for centuries, and as you can see, there's tall ships there. So the indigenous people were actually painting the tall ships as they were passing in the distance there before there was any interaction took place in that region. Anyway, the Yongala Wreck. Spoke about that earlier, but that has got a massive wildlife on it, from big bull rays, black-botched bull rays. We've got giant Queensland grouper, which I'm sure you've got over there in the Caribbean, but a different name I'd suggest that they're under, but they're all grouper nonetheless, but the largest of the grouper family, and we get lots of them there. So there's the spoil sport. This is typical weather. I'm like Pinocchio now because it's not like that always, but when we get these days, it's fantastic. We're right in the middle of winter weather right now, actually. So minke whales, during the minke whale season, it does get a bit blowy, but it doesn't impact on us in our diving. So spoil sport, she's a big vessel. She's 100 foot long. She's about 30 foot wide. We carry up to 28 guests. We have 12 crew, but it is a very spacious vessel. So we've got a large sun deck there, which is all covered in, it's got a shade over it, which is not depicted in that photograph. That's a very old photo. And so we've got a nice big shady area there. And we have a nice big lounge area, and our accommodation is all on one level as well. The extremities there, you can see we've got 4 premium cabins in the 4 corners there. And we have standard cabins. So we've got 8 cabins, which have all got window views. And down the middle of the vessel, we have what we call our club cabins and budget cabins at the very forward of the vessel there. So they're bunks in the middle, they're bunk beds. They all have ensuite, apart from the budget cabins, which have a share bathroom and shower. All other cabins have ensuite. Premium cabin. Again, to the left of that picture is the ensuite, but we've got nice big comfortable beds in there. They're really, you know, for a boat, lovely and cozy. Our standard cabins have single beds alongside each other, again with ensuite. And when we move on to our club and budget cabin, they are the same. So the club and budget cabin, obviously a little bit smaller there, but as I said, the only difference between the club cabin and the budget cabin is the club has ensuite and the budget is share. Well, there's the awning up on the sun deck there. So nice big lounge. And again, with the COVID regulations where we're reducing numbers on board. So we've reduced our numbers, but in the lounge area alone, where our dining also takes place to the left of there, we have approximately 90, just under 90 square meters, which allows us to comply with up to 20 guests, applying a 4 square meter rule. So we do ensure that we stick to that, and also with our cabin arrangements as well. We're not allowing guests to share that aren't from a travel bubble that live together. At the moment, they have to have their own cabin. So, but at least it allows us to operate, which is wonderful. We feel blessed to be able to do that. Nice big dive deck. We've got lots of room on there, photography, nice big camera station, and we have other areas for charging batteries and the likes. We have Caitlin on the right, the host on the left, Kira. She's just left us recently, headed south, but Caitlin on the right, wonderful chef, and does a fantastic job, very passionate about what she does. And we can cater to all dietary needs. So whatever you require, we can do. And we have a couple of evenings where we do a la carte type dining, you know, so it's very nice indeed. We have master reef guides in the company. So the Great Barrier Reef a few years ago introduced a new program where they select people from within the industry, they take them away, they train them up and give them more in-depth knowledge, if you like, about the land, the sea, the connection between it all, the indigenous cultures connection to the marine environment as well. So we've got we've just developed a new reef ecology program on board, which we're in the process of updating our old program, which we do on board. Safety wise, very important to us. Whilst we love our diving, safety is first and foremost to us. So everyone is supplied with a marine GPS. You're probably familiar with these, but everyone gets one on board. We have surface marker buoys, we have, everyone has an SMB, we have lookouts, we've got very strict procedures in place with regards to diver safety. And then also, obviously, with our COVID safe plans these days as well. So all of our COVID safe plans are signed off by Queensland Health, so we have to submit what we're doing. It's more complex for us on board a vessel because we're not a restaurant. We're a restaurant, we're accommodation, we're transport. So we have lots and lots of boxes that we need to tick to ensure that we comply. But so far, we're doing a pretty good job. That was just a photograph one day when we had all the girls on board. So we've got a great mix of crew, and some of these girls will leave the boys for dead, I'm afraid, when it comes to their ability on board. They're fantastic. So that is us with our an overview. I'm happy to take any questions from you all. I will put on our minke whale, our recent minke whale expedition, which we've just completed. So there's just some footage here from one of them that we've done recently. So I'll play that in the background, and if anyone has any questions, more than happy to help. Alrighty, so get rid of that, and hopefully our minke whales will come up. So this movie here was, as you can see, 25th to the 30th of June. And yeah, so we had some fantastic interaction with the whales this year. So enjoy this.
Thank you, Craig. We really appreciate it. It's a wonderful presentation. And in fact, we had some people in the chat box saying that it was a fantastic presentation. So thank you. You covered so much.
Thank you very much.
We have a couple of questions. Everybody, if you haven't been here before, you can type something in the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand in the chat box, and we will put you on with Craig live. Just before I do, I want to do a big shout out to David and Lily Mack. David and Lily Mack are here. They've been joining us. They're almost like family since April on our webinars. And it turns out that those guys were not only Mike Ball's first ever on-board wedding, but they literally got married on Mike Ball 19 years ago today. So I want to say a big congratulations and massive shout out to Lily and David Mack. And Lily, actually, you had a question to ask. So Lily, I want to put you on first, if you don't mind, and just be able to say congratulations to you.
Real quick, Craig, can you mute that video while we do our questions?
Oh, sorry, I thought it was absolutely. There we go. Did that work?
That's better, yes. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, I will get to everybody's questions, but Lily, I'm going to give you the floor right now.
Well, thanks. We actually got married on Flinders Reef, so it was definitely very memorable. But my question, and I don't know if we caught it, was whether you had nitrox on board?
Yes, we have. We've got nitrox on board, yes.
Great, thanks.
Pleasure.
Okay, I know there was a couple of people asking about nitrox, so that answered that, I think. Chris White, you're on, just to keep going with the tank situation. Chris, you're on?
Yeah, what size of tanks do you use?
Right, so we've got aluminium tanks. So we've got a variety. We've got from 60 cubic foot. We only have 4 60 cubic foot because it's not in big demand. Otherwise, our standard aluminium tanks are 80 and 88, but we also have steel tanks as well. So we've got 120 foot steel tanks. We've got 4 of them. So basically, with the larger breathers, then we we do advise guests, if they are big breathers, then they can request those larger tanks. And just with regards to that, which I didn't mention earlier, that we do accommodate technical divers and we do accommodate rebreather divers as well. So that's fairly common. Well, I wouldn't suggest common. The rebreathers seem to, there was a big spike a few years ago, but all of our staff are trained up to deal with rebreather divers as well as technical divers.
Does that answer your question, Chris? Oh, we've already got him on mute.
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
that was a comprehensive answer, I think. All right, Corey Joyner, you're up.
Thank you very much. On your opening slide, Craig, it says Mike Ball's expeditions, Cod Hole, Great Barrier Reef, and Coral Sea. Now,
Yes.
when you describe the packages, I only saw a package. I'm really dunce, and I'm trying to get an education here. So when you describe the packages, you have a Cod Sea package, a Cod Hole package, and a Coral Sea package, but Barrier Reef package. So could you explain to me, to a dunce, the difference between geographically Cod Hole, Coral Sea, and the Great Barrier Reef, and describe the difference in the diving experience in those areas?
Certainly can, Corey. So from one dunce to another, I'll make it as clear as I can. So from Cairns, we've got the Great Barrier Reef it lies about, from here, it's approximately 35 miles offshore. And we have an average depth out there of going out across the sand to the reef of around about 120 feet. And then it goes to what we call the continental shelf, where it drops off to much deeper water. So all along the coastline of from Bundaberg way to the south, but if we talk about where we dive, the Great Barrier Reef is about 35 miles offshore. Now, it's got incredible biodiversity. It's very sheltered from the weather, so we can dive the Great Barrier Reef year round. The areas that we go to are not reachable by day vessels. It's liveaboards only. So we go and we head up there on that Ribbon Reef section. So as I said, all year round. Now the Coral Sea, generally it's all in the Coral Sea, but we make reference to the Coral Sea as the open ocean beyond the Great Barrier Reef. Now the coral atolls which we dive, so we've got these isolated atolls or reef systems which come up from around about 3,000 feet out in the much deeper water. They're surrounded by very clear water. They are approximately 70 miles to 80 miles offshore, so another 30-40 miles offshore from the Great Barrier Reef. So with these reef systems, we see if I can start this video again. It's much better than looking at me. With these reef systems, if you can imagine, we leave Cairns. If we are going out for 7 nights, the first few nights of our expedition is spent beyond the Barrier Reef. We steam out right beyond the Barrier Reef. We go out into the Coral Sea, and there we've got the deep drop-offs. We've got lots of sharks, big sea fans hanging on the walls. We prefer our divers, and I think, to be fair to divers, we don't want to sell anyone into anything. We want them to have the best experience. So we suggest that divers that go out into the Coral Sea would have a minimum 15 dives that are advanced certified, because you don't want to be out there hanging on a wall, worrying about your buoyancy control, how much air you're consuming. You know, it's about going out and having the experience. So you're comfortable with your diving, and you can enjoy the diving. So we're out there for 4 nights, 3 days of diving. When we come back in for the second half of that 7-night expedition, if you like, we're on the Barrier Reef again. And the Barrier Reef, as I said, amazing biodiversity, a lot more variety of hard corals and critters, lots of critters in here, schooling fish, different types of animals. But I would suggest that that's easier diving in that you're tucked in behind the reef. even if you had an issue with your depth and you weren't paying much attention, you're bouncing off the sand at around about anywhere between 100 and 120 feet maximum. So it's a fairly safe area in which to dive, and we can dive within the barrier reef. It is still impacted by currents, of course it is, but we can pick and choose where we dive so we can hide you from the current as best we can, just to make your life easy. Does that make sense, Corey?
Yeah, so I didn't hear you mention where Cod Hole is in this picture.
All right, Cod Hole is at Lizard Island. So when we go out, the different expeditions that we can do, the fly dive Coral Sea, we don't visit Cod Hole on the fly dive Coral Sea. We visit the Cod Hole on the fly dive Cod Hole. So we leave on a Monday morning, we fly up to Lizard Island to join the vessel halfway through, and then that afternoon, on the Monday afternoon, we're steaming out and we're diving Cod Hole, and we dive for the 3 days coming back down towards Cairns on the Ribbon Reef. So the Cod Hole is at the furthest north of our standard expeditions on the Great Barrier Reef, on the Ribbon Reefs.
Does it make sense, Corey? Or
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I got a clearer explanation. So you don't dive on the Great Barrier Reef proper.
Oh no,
right?
absolutely, no, absolutely we do. Absolutely we do. The Great Barrier Reef is a generic name for the whole reef system, okay? But
Okay.
yeah, it's a generic name for the reef that runs from the tip of Australia all the way down to Bundaberg. It's just a generic name. The section which on the barrier reef which we dive is called the Ribbon Reefs, because it's a unique section of that reef where you have a very thin line of many reefs all linked together with small gaps between them all where the ocean runs through. And that section of reef, because the upwelling and the currents run through all these small gaps, you get incredible diversity, a lot of rich growth, a lot of fish life are attracted to these areas. The coral grows prolifically, that's a mouthful, in these areas. So that is the section. And it's often referred to the jewel of the Great Barrier Reef, the Ribbon Reef section.
Okay, I got it. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
okay, and Chris White, you have a couple of questions.
What's the normal water temperature?
Warm, always warm, Chris.
82, 86. I mean,
have you got the yeah, here you go. So you're going to challenge me with your Fahrenheit and your
oh, you can tell me Celsius. I can look it up.
So, all right, Celsius. We're just going to grab the Fahrenheit. But look, we are our average temperatures during the summer. Well, as cold as it gets in the winter, we drop to about 24, 25 degrees at its very coldest during the winter time. That's 24, 26 degrees centigrade. And during the summertime, we are up to around 30 degrees centigrade in the summer.
Is everybody okay with that?
77 degrees Fahrenheit approximately in the winter, and up to 30 degrees and even up to 32 near the surface during the summer. But the 32 degrees is, that's the temperature we don't like to be sustained for too long. These are the sort of temperatures that start to cause coral bleaching issues. So 30 would be an average in the summertime.
Yeah, that's about 86 for those of you that.
Thank you.
That's pretty warm.
So that's shorts and a t-shirt, not a wetsuit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a rash vest and a pair of shorts. And we do always recommend, we don't have any issues out there, and you know, everything in Australia is going to kill you if it's spiders, crocodiles, or jellyfish. But we, well, it doesn't in reality. But during the summer months, we have box jellyfish, and so in October through till April, we have box jellyfish, which are really quite lethal up here, but they are on the shoreline, so we don't get box jellyfish offshore. We have a variety of jellyfish, and the sting that you get from them is just generalized as Irukandji syndrome. So Irukandji jellyfish, I think there's about 9 within that group, or that phylum group, and but it's very, very rare for anyone to, we've had very few incidences over the decades of people being stung. But we still nonetheless recommend that you would wear at least a rash vest and a pair of shorts. And you're not permitted to wear Speedos, especially red ones, for any man over 40 years of age.
You've never met my older brother.
Yeah, oh, but I've got one too. My kids, my children
good,
are appalled by me at times.
He's in good enough shape. He actually gets away with it, which is really sad. And he's 60,
Yeah.
and he pisses me off.
That rules out my 53-year-old neighbor as well. So
He is in incredible shape and everything else. Okay, dude, knock it off. What airport would we arrive at?
Exceptions can be made on application.
What airport would we arrive at?
Right, generally speaking, Cairns. So it's an international airport.
Okay.
And you can fly. In fact, you know, I think I'm not sure. Flights are all up in the air. Pardon the pun, but flights are all up in the air at the moment. We have had direct flights coming in here from. It is an international airport, so they come from all over. Generally from the US, I'd suggest you'd be coming in via Brisbane or Sydney. And again, you know, if you're coming a long way, it's always a good idea to consider stopping in Sydney for a few days, because it is a lovely part of the world. But who knows for the future? But certainly Cairns is international. If we were doing, or you were coming on the Turtle Spectacular expedition, then you would still be flying into Cairns more than likely, and then there's another puddle jump aircraft, if you like, to get up to Horn Island up in the far north. So that's a commercial flight also. The flights that you saw on the Fly Dive, they are charter aircraft that we use for our expeditions. We're not using them just now, and we don't anticipate using them again until next June and July, because right now we're not filling the vessel, we're relying on domestic support, so we have far fewer numbers going to sea at the moment. So what we've done is we've extended our expeditions for the same price that people would normally pay for the 3-night or the 4-night. We've turned them into a 4-night and a 5-night. So at this juncture, guests are getting an extra night on the reef, and they're also getting extra dives and extra meals for the same price. And the reason being is because we travel so far, we're not using aircraft. We need that extra day on the reef to steam back overnight back to port or to leave port.
Okay. Do you think you'll be open mid to late March or not?
We're open.
No, I mean for international.
I don't. I would love to say yes. What I've, you know, it's such a fluid situation, and we've been trying to make our plans as best we can based on the information given. And honestly, we had Queensland. Look, we are very, very fortunate up here in Queensland, and Australia in general has been good, although we've had a second wave through Victoria down south. But up in Queensland, for example, I think we've got 1 or maybe 2 active cases in the whole of Queensland, which is a huge state, but all of our borders are closed. So we're open to South Australia, we're open to Northern Territory. I'd suggest you're not familiar with the geography of Australia, but to the south of us, we have New South Wales, which has got a huge population and a lot of divers down there which cannot get to us, and also in Victoria. So at the moment, all these borders are closed down. Lots of talks happening at the moment, contact tracing and closing things down, but Queensland have decided they will probably keep our borders closed until the end of the year, I'd suggest. And beyond that, though, I really don't anticipate international travel here until, I would say, around mid next year. That's my thoughts.
Okay.
But you know, who knows? But as far as we're concerned, we've put in, and we've already put out our plans. We've got already our itineraries and our expeditions. They've gone out to agents right through to March 2022, but we do have our plans right through into 2023 as well already made. So as far as what we're doing is we are keeping the non-fly dive expeditions and really basing everything we do on our domestic market through until June, July next year. When we get back to the minke whale season, June, July, we're reverting back to all of our traditional fly-in, fly-out expeditions. Anyone who comes here, though, I mean, if things did change and people get here in March or April next year from internationally, we do have 7-night expeditions running anyway. So we hope that with the domestic support, and strangely enough, even in Queensland, we're getting very, very good support. And also, Australians cannot go overseas. A lot of our divers travel overseas, especially to Micronesia, Indonesia, so they cannot do that now. So they're looking much closer to home to go diving. So we are getting some decent support.
Okay, thank you.
And Loretta, I'm just, because you kind of had that question as well as far as how to get there. You'd asked specifically from Cleveland. I won't get into those details, but you know how to kind of email us or call us if you want to get from Cleveland. But in a nutshell, it's very, very easy to get to Cairns. And as Craig mentioned, most of the time from the US, it's usually typically with a change in Brisbane or Sydney, depending on the airline. Almost every US major gateway, West Coast, East Coast, and Midwest, and Southwest, all serve Australia continuous, well, pre-COVID, Australia constantly every day. We also have some customers you can get there by other means, such as through Papua New Guinea, such as through Fiji or New Zealand. You can come up with some really amazing itineraries, either different areas of Australia and do a bit of diving and land-based, which is incredible. You could focus mainly on Mike Ball for your diving in a few days overnight in Sydney or somewhere elsewhere in Australia. Or if you've got a little bit longer time and some more money, you can definitely stop somewhere in the South Pacific as well and do a couple of amazing destinations together. So it's very, very easy to get there and really well served from the US by flight. And then, of course, if you're somewhere like Loretta in Cleveland, it's very easy to just do an add-on to your closest gateway that has the best schedule and fare going on at the time. So I hope that helps a little bit on how to get there.
Yeah, I think as Cheryl said, there's lots of beautiful places to visit in Australia and also up here in Cairns as well. So pre-expedition or post-expedition, we've got spectacular rainforests, we've got train travel, we've got beautiful tablelands and waterfalls, and it really is a stunning place. We're very isolated up here, but we've got an awful lot to offer for people to stay and you know, explore the place furthermore.
Thanks. Okay, Jeff, you are on and your microphone is unmuted.
Hello, Cheryl. Hello, Craig. On one of your pictures, I noticed that divers were using pony bottles. Do you provide pony bottles?
We do, Jeff. So we have solo diving on board. So we actually run, if you're not qualified, you can get certified on board with the Self-Reliant Diver. We've been solo diving for many, many years, and Mike introduced it a long time ago. And so we had our own in-house program. And so, yeah, if divers had a certain amount of experience, we would do a skill circuit with them and ensuring they had the appropriate equipment, extra equipment, they could go off solo diving. But PADI have now the Self-Reliant Diver, which is ideally meant so you can look after yourself if something goes wrong. But PADI, if you meet the prerequisites now, it does count for solo diving. So absolutely, we have pony bottles on board, pony regs. The only other additional request is that you have a backup computer, you have a surface marker buoy. Obviously on the pony bottle, you've got another submersible pressure gauge on there as well. So, and you can go off, and a lot of our photographers take advantage of that.
Okay. The second question I have too is you mentioned that you offer doubles and rebreathers. I'm not rebreather, but I am Advanced Nitrox decal. For your doubles, do you provide the double bands and the Tech BCs, or do we have to bring them with us?
You'd bring your own. You'd bring your own, because a lot of the technical divers, we have a lot of side mountain divers now as well, and so we just encourage you for your own comfort, you know, to bring that. I mean, you know, all you need to do is bring your BC and your bands, and then we can help you setting it all up whilst you're on board.
Well, the question I have here is that's interesting, because if the bands, my bands are specifically for my high pressures 100s and 120s. If
Yeah,
you don't have
yeah.
those specific tanks, my bands will not fit to accommodate your tanks on board.
Yep. There you go. Look, you know, if you put in a special request, if you're coming out, we could look into it. I mean, it's what we do duck and weave for different divers with unusual requests. Most people will bring their own kit. Obviously, with our alley tanks, we have how much would you normally carry?
Well,
Would
first
you-
of all,
would you-
I pretty much go with the flow with what the majority of the people want to do. I'm perfectly comfortable doing no decompression diving too. But in
Yeah.
my area in New Jersey, I dive New Jersey wrecks, which I've been doing for 38 years. So I either dive doubles or I dive pony bottles religiously. Here,
Yeah.
a pony bottle is required. We don't believe in octopuses here off in New Jersey. We require that everyone has a redundant system, either a set of doubles or a pony bottle. So
Yeah.
it's too much of a hassle to bring bands for travel.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I mean, Jeff, we
Also to hook them up too, you'd either have to pop off the boots off the bottom of the tanks, or you'd have to disassemble and reassemble the manifolds to put them on anyway. So it's
Yeah.
not worthwhile to do that. So I
Yeah.
prefer to go with a single and a pony bottle just to make
Well,
life
that's right. And we have, I mean, all of our diving is no deco diving, is what we do anyway. I mean, on special expeditions, we do run wreck expeditions, and we do deep expeditions from time to time when there's demand. But most of our diving, it's all no decompression diving anyway. But we have got a variety of pony bottles. We've got let me think now, 20 cubic foot, 30 or 40 cubic foot as well. So we've got a variety of pony bottles that can be used.
Okay, that'll do fine. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, Jeff.
Lona, you don't have a mic, so I'm asking or making your statement on your behalf. Thank you so much for your patiently waiting. Lona says, Craig, my husband and I dove with Mike Ball Water Sports out of Townsville in 1988.
Wow.
Am I correct? Am I correct in thinking it was the Super Sport and the Spoil Sport came online after that?
That's right. So the very first vessel was Water Sport, 81, and she came on, and she was a steel-hulled vessel. And then we built Super Sport in 86, and which was a fun boat, fantastic. Super Sport was down in Townsville, and then she moved up to Cairns, and then we built Spoil Sport in 1989. Now, Spoil Sport is our current vessel today. And so it's very likely that you would have been on Super Sport, yeah. And then Paradise Sport we built in 97. So yeah.
Thank you. If anybody else has any other questions, now's your last chance to raise your hand. We'll stay as long as you guys want and have questions, but at some point, what time is it there, Craig?
I have no idea. I mean, 10:05 in the morning.
In the morning. Oh, it's not so bad then.
No, perfectly okay for us.
Okay. Well, yeah, if anyone else has any other questions, please now raise your hand or pop in the chat box. Glenn Stud, you're on.
Yes, Craig. You might have seen in the comments, my first ever certified dive was at Cod Hope. And,
wow.
And believe it or not, my 1000th dive was Cod Hope. So, but I wanted to wish you well in these trying times. I visited the Yongala, and that was one of the best dives that I can remember. I understand that a lot of it collapsed, and
Yeah, we had Cyclone Yasi. And yeah, but the very strange thing about that, and Cyclone Yasi was a particularly big cyclone or typhoon that you have over there. But the strange thing about that is when we had the cyclone come through, and it stripped off a lot of the marine life. So if you, to the untrained eye, you could actually almost, until you see the davit cranes and what have you, and the hulls, the deck side, you could actually dive on the Yongala, if you recall. And if you didn't know, you could be on a reef because it was so
Yes.
covered in growth. The marine life is so prolific. Then what happened after Yasi? There was a great concern for all about sections of it collapsing. But in actual fact, there were some sections collapsed, yes, but with the marine growth having been stripped off with such violent seas, then what it did was it actually re-exposed the wreck. So when you go back on it now and you dive it, you go, wow, there's the wreck. And it's really quite interesting. So it's actually given the whole dive, if you like, a new dynamic. And so you really do feel you're diving a wreck again and not a reef. So, and all the marine life is still there, and the growth has come back, and it's as stunning as ever,
Yeah, I do remember not looking at it as a wreck at all.
Yeah.
In the middle of the sea, totally exposed, and such big animals.
Yeah, exactly. It really is, and it's still we have our dive staff are often, you know, they have a week off. You'd think they'd get dived out, but they don't. They head down and dive the Yongala for leisure on their week off, you know, between expeditions.
Well, I wish you well. I hope to be back there, you know, sometime in the future.
I hope so too. I hope so. I mean, look, we will. We're pulling out all stops. We're confident. I mean, they are very, very difficult and trying times. But the fact that we're out there at all, and we've been out there since June 18, it's wonderful. And you know, we're flying the flag. We're getting some great diving in, and you know, I intend to be here for a long time.
I hope to see you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. And Lily Mack, if you remember, I mentioned Lily and David Mack, they're saying thank you so much, but it was a great presentation and it brings back fond memories. They plan to be back for their 21st.
Wonderful. Well, we'll look after you. You make sure you let us know when you come back, and we'll pop a bottle of bubbly under the water.
Sounds good.